Susan Clarine is a master certified emotional intelligence coach. After a 25-year career in organizational development and talent management, she founded the EI Coach with a commitment to helping leaders gain insight into how emotions affect their work, their relationships, and their results. Susan offers customized solutions focused on leading with emotional intelligence, happiness, team dynamics, and getting derailed leaders back on track with emotional agility and positive energy. In today's podcast, Susan talks about emotional intelligence and the identity shifts that we all go through our entire lives and how they can impact our professional and personal lives. She talks about some tools and resources that we can use to help us through the change process. I hope you enjoy this episode. Hi, Susan. Welcome to Thriving Changes. Thank you so much for taking out the time to do this again with me. Just to give my listeners a context, I had recorded once with Susan, and her podcast got lost when my hard drive gave me some trouble, and she has been very kind to give me some time again to do this all over again. So I am really thankful.
Happy to be here a second time. No problem.
Yeah, I'm grateful. Let's begin. Tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, what's your background.
So, I'm an emotional intelligence coach, and I'd say my business focuses primarily on leadership and leadership development within different organizations. And my company is called the EI Coach. And I started the EI Coach 7.5 years ago. It's been great. I am a solopreneur, and my background was a bit of a journey. So I actually started out as a theater major. You can
Oh,
imagine that, yes, and did the whole struggling actor thing for many years. And then I got into sales and sales training. And from there, I really developed my training background, went back to school, focused on organizational development, talent management, leadership development, and coaching. And I've been coaching since around 2010. Time flies.
yeah, yeah.
I have been doing a lot of coaching. So my background then was primarily in leadership development within different organizations. And then when I started the EI coach, now I do that on a consulting basis, specifically focused in the areas of EQ.
All right. So help us understand what is emotional intelligence and what role does it play in our lives?
Okay. The easiest way, I think, to understand emotional intelligence is talk about, well, what it's not. It is not based on your personality, right? It is not trait based. Emotional intelligence are skills we can learn and develop. And the role those skills play in our lives is being able to better understand and manage our own emotional thoughts, triggers, beliefs, perceptions. And with that understanding comes an ability and a skill set to respond more effectively to the emotions and reactions of others. Ultimately, so we can be more effective, whether that's our personal life, our professional life, whether that's work colleagues, whether that's with our kids, our partners, right, family members. As long as we're interacting with other humans, there's really no area of our lives where emotional intelligence doesn't come into play at some part, even just in our day to day.
So, how does it grow? I know that there is an IQ and then there's an EQ. And IQ grows in the beginning. When a child is growing, there is a certain age that it grows, I think 18 or
Yeah, around age 17, 18 is
yeah,
when our IQ tends to top out.
that's right. Yeah.
Mhm.
And so, what is it with EQ? Is it something similar or does it grow at a later stage as well?
Yeah, so the research tells us that our EQ, or I would say our ability, our capacity to really engage with emotional self awareness, tends to grow and develop over our lifetime. So the older we get, the more emotionally intelligent we get. And that's, of course, assuming that we're also developing some self awareness, we're reflecting on our experiences, and it makes sense, right? Because we have more things to draw upon, things we've experienced in life, things that we have gone through to understand our own selves, to build some resiliency, to develop optimism, to know what makes us happy, what doesn't make us happy. All of that falls within the realm of emotional intelligence. And then there's also a neurological component. So when we think, what is an emotion? Well, we would say it's a neurological, biochemical, hormonal response to some kind of sensory input or stimulus. And that sensory input could be our own thoughts, right? Beliefs, worries. If you wake up at 3 a.m. and your mind is spinning, right? It could be something happening externally in our environment. That could be a new job. It could be getting married. It could be getting divorced, right? It could be a big birthday, all of these transitions that happen in life. And emotional intelligence is our interpretation of that internal or external stimulus and information. So, where the body, the brain, the mind all comes together when we think about emotional intelligence, it's all of those things informing and interacting together. So, we know neurologically what the neuroscientists tell us. I'm not a neuroscientist, I'm a coach, but what the neuroscience tells us is our prefrontal cortex, the part up here where our rational thought, decision making, empathy, optimism, some of those things reside, isn't fully developed until around age 24. So our limbic system, the emotional regulation part of our brain. Your audience might be familiar with the fight, flight, freeze response, right? The amygdala interpreting our environment. That's the emotional part of our brain that we have, but the prefrontal cortex, that decision making part of our consciousness and conscious awareness, isn't fully developed until around age 24, 25. So again, the older we get, then the more the mind, the brain, the body, we become more aware of how all of those things are interacting and influencing how we are perceiving ourselves and how we perceive other people.
Got it.
Mhm.
Yeah, I know that just with kids, I'm a professor at a university as well.
Mhm.
And even in graduate school, I realized that I think 24, 25 is still,
Mhm.
yes, things start getting assembled, but there are times that I think can take another couple of years for things to really settle in. Maybe sometime 26, 27, and that's really the prefrontal cortex that really helps us in, as you said, decision making, just thinking through it and not being impulsive
Mhm.
about certain things. And especially, I guess that would be really important in leadership at work and when we are interacting with our team. So, could you share an example, like somebody you've coached or in your personal life, how it shifted your understanding when you started focusing on emotional intelligence? And
Yeah.
what difference did it make?
Oh, I think so. For me personally, I think when I was a younger manager, I fell into a trap that many young managers and first time managers do, which is thinking I have to have all the answers. I have to focus just on results and delivering on results. And that can lead to a stress response, even subconsciously. So, like many, right, people and many young leaders, my intentions oftentimes were not coming across, right, the way I intended, and I was perceived differently. And whether it's employees or other colleagues would sometimes perceive me in a way that was the exact opposite of how I was trying to come across. And why? Because of that sense of urgency. So you mentioned impulse control, right? So that sense of urgency, got to react, got to respond, got to get things done. So that can come across as very command and control. Not really effective, right? We want people to be following us. And when we want to create that sense of trust, right, and community and belonging. So I think it was making my own mistakes and trying to figure out why I was making those mistakes or why I wasn't being perceived the way I intended, which I had good intentions, right? Most people I think have good intentions. They just get in their own way, and I was getting in my own way. So that led me to, all right, what can I do differently or better? And that led me into really researching and understanding more about emotional intelligence. And I'd say over my career, impulse control is one that I do coach a lot. And interestingly, even at the highest levels, so even at executive level and C-suite level, and I'm thinking of one gentleman, and this can often happen when you're part of a new team or part of a new executive team, is wanting to contribute, right? Wanting your voice to be heard, wanting to contribute. I'm thinking of one gentleman that was part of this new executive team, and he would overtalk, he would interrupt, he would try to add value by sharing his thoughts and opinions, but how he was being perceived by others was, well, you're new to the team, your thoughts and opinions may not be relevant, you need to really learn our organization first. And that's something pretty common that people can run into. So I like to say it's really normal. So if anyone is struggling with impulse control, it just means you're really human, because these are their habits that we develop. And emotional intelligence is really understanding, oh, okay, I've got these habits that are formed. Are these habits helping me? Are they helping me to be consistent, right? And deliver a consistent leadership experience? Or, oops, are they making me seem impulsive and erratic? Does that answer the question?
Yes, you did. Yeah. So I'm trying to think about, like, when approach you, um, do they understand what's in the way? Sometimes we don't recognize what's in our own way. I can't see the picture when I'm in the frame. I can't see my own blind spots. What is it?
I know. I'd say that's why it's a blind spot. It's something everybody else can see, but you can't.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So,
I'd say it's like half and half.
okay.
I'd say depending upon someone's experience, personal experience, because unless you've received training in this, right, it's something that people aren't very adept at understanding about themselves. Now, some people, they've maybe worked with a coach, or maybe they've been in therapy, or maybe they've done other assessments or things, or been through a graduate school program where they've been introduced to these things, and they might be a little bit more in tune, right? Then they might say, hey, I really need to work on empathy. It's something that's hard for me. I become judgmental. Some people are pretty self aware, other people aren't. I'd say it's half and half. And I think what can help with that is some kind of tool or assessment. And I use assessments that are scientifically validated in the space of EQ and emotional intelligence. That might be a self assessment, or it might be a 360-degree assessment where they're getting feedback, input from other people. And that can start to create those light bulb moments, right? Or those aha moments. Or maybe I'm thinking of a leader who was getting some feedback, and he was very attuned and aware of his feedback. And that feedback was, some people were quitting because they said he was too hard on them or too much of a micromanager. He was very successful in terms of what he was delivering for the organization. He was a top performer. But when it came to his people, turnover, engagement, this organization did some employee engagement surveys, and his engagement scores were very low. And a lot of the feedback, right, was around lack of trust and micromanagement and not listening. So for him, the assessment helped him start to discover for himself, oh, I'm really competitive. That was his mindset. I'm competitive. And for me, it's all about winning. And therefore, I think everybody thinks like me. Everybody thinks it's about winning. And oftentimes, what people realize if they have that blind spot, and we all have different kinds of blind spots, but I'd say thematically, one of the biggest ones is that, and if it's a leader or whoever it might be, they think, oh, everybody else thinks like I do, and they don't. And that's that first step of emotional awareness is, oh, no, that's just me. Other people do think differently. So for him, it started with this, just helping him to understand, oh, I'm competitive. It's about winning. That's his whole value system. Values are great until those values in action conflict with someone else's values. Then there's an opportunity, right, to bring that together for some emotional awareness.
Yeah. To think of it like it's a quality that got him where he was. He was a successful individual. And sometimes that good competitive spirit is needed to make progress in your career. But there are times when that itself starts becoming an issue, and we need to start looking at it. Can take you to a certain level, but it might be interfering in other avenues like his relationships. And it doesn't mean that if we make a change or make a shift in how we deal with people, it doesn't mean that we are not going to climb the ladder anymore. It's just that we are going to use a different strategy to accomplish that goal.
Yes, and you're absolutely right because people are successful because of those very skills that all of a sudden they hit a certain level and it's not about those skills, right? Like myself included. So I was strong and adept at project management, right? Task orientation, organizing, managing projects, leading large organizational projects, getting everyone aligned, right? I was good at that. I enjoyed it. And not that I didn't enjoy people, right? But my mindset when I was younger at the time was, oh, people are just part of this project. They're just another element to drive to the result. And that worked until it didn't, right? And then I needed to learn, oh, wait a minute. Yes, I can have these skills and I need to learn the people skills, how to engage people so they want to contribute. They're engaged, right, with whatever that might be. And I think for a lot of leaders, again, it's very common. They are promoted because of their subject matter expertise, great at process, procedure, right? Whatever the subject matter orientation is. And then all of a sudden they're in a position where they need to lead other people. And I'd say, and that's something I would encourage again your audience to really think about because oftentimes people will move into these leadership positions because they like the idea, right? Of I have this title, or I'm going to make more money, or whatever it might be. But at the end of the day, they maybe really don't like leading people. That's okay because you really need those good subject matter experts as well. So I'm thinking about the scientist for a pharmaceutical company. And again, the whole culture around science and within a pharmaceutical company and research was around process, procedure, quality orientation, being exacting. We would hope, right? That's what even the culture celebrates. And then she found herself all of a sudden in a position where she was promoted. And it wasn't about managing the quality orientation, it was about how she then manages other scientists, other researchers. It was about her leading, and oh, that was a tough lift and a bit of a shock. And of course, because now all of a sudden it's something completely different. And oftentimes leaders find themselves that they're just not prepared for it because no one else has prepared them to take on that kind of role. Which is, again, it's okay if somebody's in that position. It happens all the time,
Yeah.
right?
When people take up a position where they have to manage people, what are some skills that can help them, skills that they can develop?
Well, and again, the best alternative, if they have an opportunity to work with a coach, right? Get some feedback, assessments can help because you're getting data. You're getting data and feedback and input outside your own mind and judgment. But not everyone has access to that. So, things I would encourage people to do are go to TED Talks, right? And just do a search on emotional intelligence. And there's some great speakers out there to go to YouTube, emotional intelligence, and just start to watch some videos, some TED Talks, and start to reflect on, oh, where might this be true for me? Where might some of these concepts be showing up for me? Because it's a muscle, a mental muscle for us to develop. And if I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, oh, I'd really like to get stronger and build my muscles, I can think about it. But until I really start, oh, I need to probably watch some videos, I need to exercise, I need to lift some dumbbells, until I really start doing it, thinking about it isn't really going to probably shift. So people have to invest the time. If somebody just thinks, oh, I'm going to try to be more emotionally intelligent, chances are, and don't make it a face here, but chances are that's a great intention, but it's really hard to step outside our own brains, right? It's really hard to step outside of ourselves and see ourselves the way other people see us. A simple thing could be too, if you're leading virtual teams or working virtually, just record yourself, whether
Yeah.
it's on Microsoft Teams or Zoom, and then watch yourself back. And that's a skill around we would call emotional expression, right? So how am I really coming across? And look at the other people. Are they looking at me? Are they engaged? Are they disengaged? What did I say? How did I say it? It's really hard to develop these skills if you don't have some kind of external input or thoughts, or if you aren't doing some reading, something that's going to start to open you up to change ultimately. And so I'd say you have to be willing to change. And change is uncomfortable. So it's also about getting into an uncomfortable place with yourself.
So, what does change mean to you? And you see this all the time in your career. What does change mean to you?
Change change is inevitable, right? And I'm certainly not the first person to say that. But what does it really mean in the day to day? And I would say change for me personally, and change even from an EQ perspective, is the willingness to release our own expectations about ourselves, a willingness to change our identity. And maybe a better word is transform. Because what I've learned at the age I am now, and over the last 30 years or so, we don't even almost recognize it until we're face to face with it. But our identity, our sense of self, shifts and changes and moves throughout our life. It's always transforming. We're never who we are today, who we were yesterday, or certainly even the year before. And I think where I've really been excited about my clients and been very happy for them is those who've not just engaged in the coaching process, but people who really understood and embraced, oh, I need to be somebody a little different. And that's going to disrupt my identity, whether that's the scientist I mentioned, shifting her mind from I'm a scientist to, oh, I'm a people leader. And for her, that meant I want to be a good coach. Well, what do I need to do to be a great coach? Or the person I mentioned where his whole mindset was around being competitive and winning. He's, oh, wait, okay, that served me, got me to where I am. But what do I really want? He said, I want everybody else to feel like they're winning, and I'm just there to champion them. So he had to kind of let go of this idea of who he was. And that can happen in different ways, right? In our personal life, that might be, like I said, getting married, getting divorced, being a mom or a dad, being an empty nester, taking on a new job, within a job, shifting roles, shifting from, hey, I'm this great producer, to, oh, now I'm managing people, or I'm doing something a little different. And we don't recognize it because it's just our day to day. And right as we go through the day to day, it's like, oh, wait a minute, until someone points it out, oh, I'm actually shifting my identity, and it's the embrace of that identity shift.
Yes, that identity shifts can be really uncomfortable. Now I'm reflecting back, and for example, hosting a podcast. Now, coming out and being on a public platform was a huge challenge for me to speak. It took me to shift that perspective. Oh, I have to speak in front of people. And as you said, build that muscle. It took
Mhm.
me a good 4 or 5 years to just sit on it and ponder. And of course, I did work on it, whether it was getting some training or putting myself in positions where it would require me to do some public speaking and see myself. And that recording bit really helped because I would record myself. And in the beginning, I was like, God, nobody's even going to listen to me. It was so bad.
Mhm.
But it's something that I worked on, and it was a process to shift that identity
Mhm.
from, as you said, whether it was a stay-at-home mom, going back into the workforce, being an empty nester, and now I start thinking of retirement, like, oh, what will that look like? And
Mhm.
it is an identity shift. You were in for over 25, 30 years in the corporate world. How did that shift happen?
Oh, that's really interesting. Slowly at first. And I'd say for anyone who's thinking about becoming an entrepreneur or a solopreneur like I am or consultant, schedule. That was the thing that I noticed the first is in corporate, you get up, you get ready for work. I'm in Chicago in the United States, you drive to work. There's a set routine and a set schedule. And to all of a sudden have that gone, that was very disconcerting. It's okay, I need to make my own schedule and set my own routine. And I think that's a lesson that people can take no matter what they're doing is creating a routine for whatever it is they're trying to create in their lives. And so for me, it was okay, I'm going to get up and I would get dressed. I'm at home. Did I really need to get dressed? Depending on it. But nope, I'm going to still get up in the morning. I'm going to get dressed. I'm going to put on my makeup. I'm going to create that routine. So I'm in the mindset of work. And it was very uncomfortable, I'd say, for at least the first 9 months or so until I got into the routine of it. And then it's also embracing with a new identity, right? Comes new opportunities and different things. And then over the years, it was embracing, oh, this is great. I am in business for myself. Maybe I do want to do something else today or take a day off and getting comfortable with that shift. So there's healthy self doubt. Healthy self doubt is what you described for yourself. There might have been like, oh, can I do this? This is a little different, but it's a healthy self doubt when we can say, of course I'm uncomfortable, or of course I'm nervous, or this is different, or this feels strange. And it's something I need to work at. It doesn't happen by magic. And I'd say for anything, establishing routine and habit is going to help you achieve more of whatever it is that you want in your life. So you mentioned retirement. So retirement isn't just stopping, right? It's, oh, I'm going to do something new, something different. And what would those habits look like? How could I put something into a routine, whether it's traveling or volunteering or whatever my second chapter might look like? What does that look like? And creating some routine around that. And I think as we get older, that routine is how we define success. When we're younger, we think, oh, I have to get this job title or make a certain amount of money. And then again, we become more emotionally intelligent. We learn, oh, that's not what makes us happy. What makes us happy is that consistency of life experience that is simply recognizing and appreciating and creating some, I kind of go back to right habit and routine around what we have in life and that daily appreciation. Does that answer the question?
It makes so much sense. It's so important to really, first of all, recognize our current identities. And
Mhm.
if there needs to be a shift in the identity, what is it that you want it to look like? And
Mhm.
to really understand what brings you happiness. And as you said, it may not be money, it's the experiences, it's the consistency of those experiences that bring us fulfillment and happiness.
Yeah. And just a little personal story, and
Mhm.
this may not be for everyone.
Yep.
That's what
Yeah.
I did. And I've moved around a lot in my life, and so that might make me more adept to letting things go. I'm big on cleaning house and spring cleaning and throwing stuff out, and some people aren't. But for whatever reason, during COVID, I just developed this obsession with letting go of things like mementos, pictures. Now, I know some people that might make them very uncomfortable, but I really went through and curated, and I held on to some things, but I'm like, my high school yearbooks, I let them go, got rid of them. The people I know, I still have in my life are great, but the rest of these people, why am I holding on to these big, heavy books? Other things, again, I was a theater major. Things from shows, little mementos, and I don't have kids. So I'm like, who's going to care? Who am I going to pass all this stuff on to? Who might be interested? And I kept some things, but I got rid of a lot of stuff. Letters from old boyfriends, all these things. And it was really interesting because there's so much identity wrapped up in pictures, mementos, old letters, trophies. And for me, it was a coming to awareness of, oh, at the time, I'm in my late 50s. I'm not going to be a dancer ever again. I'm not going to, got arthritis. It's not going to happen, whatever it might be. And for me, it was very freeing and cleansing because that identity shift from, I'm not that person anymore. I'm something else. I don't know what that something else is. It's still evolving. And now at 60, I feel very light and free and not tied to this identity from my high school, college, even my 20s or 30s. And for me, that was a physical letting go of some of those things. Now, I'm not saying everybody has to do that. Some people like their pictures, but
That concept, it's the concept. So it's something like, if any time that letting go is to let go what doesn't make sense to you anymore,
mhm,
right? It can be a thought, it could be a toxic relationship, it could be
mhm.
a toxic job environment that is not working for you, and you need to do that cleansing. But of course, one needs to really think through it and be strategic. It can't be just an impulse thing that if this doesn't work, but really think through it if you're ready for it. It makes sense. If we want to have something new in our life, we need to unlearn also of the old thing,
And also perhaps to embrace what you are right now in this moment, right? And
right?
to free yourself of this pressure or obligation to even know what's next,
Yeah.
right? It's just, oh, okay, this is what I have now. I have white hair. I'm not going to ever be a brunette again. This is me now. That's great. And like you said, I think for me, that exercise wasn't just something I did impulsively. It's something I thought about for months. And then it's like, okay, I'm going to do it. And I felt better afterwards. And I think it's that appreciation of wherever you are now, who you are now, what you are now, and embracing all the parts, right? The beauty and the ugly bits. We've all got them. And just be like, oh, okay. That's also an emotional skill, right? Is just to be satisfied and accept yourself, warts and all.
Yeah, absolutely. You were in the corporate world for so long, and then you started your own. Now you're a
Mhm.
solo entrepreneur. Were there any skills that you had to learn? It's so different. You have a paycheck coming in. You don't have to really worry every month there is. But with when you are an entrepreneur, and especially in the business that we are in, it could be great one month, it could not. The next month
Mhm.
might be a bit slow. And were there any skills that you had to learn other than emotional intelligence, but as an entrepreneur, as somebody who had to manage a business? Were there something that you had to learn to do it better?
I would say the skill of knowing what I was good at and what I was not good at, and being willing to let go of certain things, whether that was getting an accountant, right? Or, farming something out or paying somebody to do my website. My very first website I did myself. And then after a year or so, it's okay, I know what I know. It's like you learn that really quick is where can I spend my time where it's going to create the most value and not waste a lot of time, effort, or energy on things you simply aren't good at or don't enjoy. And that's a hard lesson, especially for a solopreneur, because you feel that need for control, right? And want to do everything. Or it's really hard to spend money, right? When
That's
you don't
yeah,
have stuff
exactly.
coming in. And it's kind of cliche, but you do have to spend the money to make the money. So I'd say it's not maybe a skill, but it's a mindset of knowing, okay, my first couple years, there's going to be an outlay before there is an income. So with that, there's also the emotional skill set. I'm just believing in yourself, or even if people around you are saying, oh, you're crazy. And whether it's myself, just very fortunate. I've had great clients. I've been successful, whether it's other people I know who did something similar like yourself, right? It is just that belief that it's going to work out. you know, it's all going to work out. And with that, I would say the skill set of networking, because so many people helped me when I started, and I try to also help others any place that I can, and just hearing other people's stories, because the way you do it may not be the way I do it, but it gives you ideas. So to get out, whether it's physically right out of your home office, whether it's virtual networking, I'd say the networking piece is really helpful, gives you some perspective, other people to bounce things off of. And I just say also the skill of saying no. And I'd say that's something that usually people come to after their first couple of years, is knowing what you don't want to do and having the courage, but also just the business sense and awareness of, no, that's not a good fit for me. And saying no, because you can't say yes to something else if you aren't saying no to some other things. And those little things that you say yes to that you don't really want to say yes to, those are the biggest energy drainers.
Great input. I think that really sums it up. So, anything exciting coming up? What's next for you?
Well, half my business, I do executive emotional intelligence coaching. The other half my business is I certify other coaches or HR leaders or training and development leaders in emotional intelligence. And so I have some certification classes coming up. It's one of my favorite things to do. And this year was really interesting because, and I'm not exactly even sure why, but a lot of coaches from different branches of the military. I've always had that, but a big surge over the last year. Police. So I've had several police officers, police commanders become certified emotional intelligence to bring it back to their local divisions. I've had government employees, I've had Secret Service, I've had like pastors. So that was like really exciting and interesting. They're finding me. I wasn't cultivating this, but they've all found me. And the different ways I'm seeing people from different walks of life embrace these skills and become coaches and become certified in it so they can bring it back to their communities, whatever that might be. And so I'd say that's the thing that I always look forward to the most that I
Wow.
have
Yeah.
coming up. Mhm.
Yeah. That sounds interesting. How do you do that? So, what does that certification look like?
So I partner with an organization called Multi Health Systems. They're based out of Canada, but they have a scientifically validated assessment in emotional intelligence called the EQI. And that is one of the tools that I use. It's actually my favorite tool for emotional intelligence. And so I'm master certified in that assessment. And then through Multi Health Systems and their partner program, I'm an authorized trainer for other people to become certified in the EQI assessment tool.
Oh, wow.
So,
Okay. How can people find you?
they can find me through my website, which is theeicoach.com, all one word. They can email me, Susan at theeicoach.com. And on my website, if they're interested in executive EQ coaching, I've got information on that. If they're interested in training or doing training programs, I do that as well. There's some information on my website. If they're interested in becoming certified in emotional intelligence, that's on my website as well. Or checking out my LinkedIn, right? Susan Clarine on my LinkedIn page.
Okay. Thank you. How do you look back at it all?
How? As a younger person, I was someone who always stressed a little bit around not knowing what my purpose or passion was. So again, I'm of an age, I grew up with Oprah Winfrey.
Yeah.
Oprah was on TV, always saying every day, do your passion, work your passion. I'm like, I don't know what that is. It took me a while. And it really took me until my 50s and really just finding this world of understanding emotions and what that could do for people and becoming a coach that I really didn't find my meaning and purpose until much later in life. I think as I look back on it all, and that was maybe the biggest surprise is that I didn't even expect out of this journey was, gosh, it's great. It's great that towards the later end of my life, I really found something that I enjoy and gives me such satisfaction as well as connection with other people. It's been really rewarding. I feel very lucky and fortunate.
That's great. That's so good to hear. Would you have done anything differently?
But I've done anything that's probably not because I think I needed to learn, I needed to make mistakes. I needed to screw up and do the wrong thing and fail and to be able to understand and meet my clients where they are. If I hadn't had those experiences, then I couldn't really, perhaps I could, but I feel better equipped to be able to relate and make those connections with other people. And it's only through the mistakes, right, that we learn. And it's been an interesting journey. And I'd say to go from, I think being an actor, being a theater major was helpful in that it taught me how to listen, right? Because good actors really are really focused on listening and reacting and responding to others. So I think that was some early training ground for being a coach. And I tried a lot of different things in my life. Did they all work out? No. So maybe I could have done some things differently, but I would have ended in a different place. And then maybe I wouldn't be happy, right? Because ultimately, to me, that's just the cherry on the sundae is to get to this stage of life and feel very satisfied and fortunate and just happy every day. That's its greatest reward.
To be happy and to know that, okay, this is where I'm supposed to be and
Mhm.
content with it. That's the experience that we all chase.
Mhm.
So if you have that, then I guess you have the world. What advice would you give to somebody who is probably going through a shift in identity?
I would encourage them to find a channel that they're comfortable with to express that, to get it out. Whether that's writing in a journal, just writing down what they're thinking, what they're feeling, what they're experiencing, get it out of their head and onto a piece of paper where they can look at it objectively. I do encourage handwriting because that can tap into some creativity, some neural pathways, some mindfulness that we don't always experience, like when we're typing. So I'm just, and it takes longer and it creates some space for, I think, more reflection when you're handwriting. If they don't like that, somebody would say, I'm not going to do that. Then I would encourage them to talk with someone, to take a walk, to talk into a recorder, in some way express verbally or through writing what they're experiencing around this identity shift, what they might be thinking or feeling. I was coaching someone whose daughter, first, we had two kids. This was the first one going off to college. And he was absolutely just emotionally stifled, buried all those emotions around her leaving home. And through the coaching conversation, some of this started to come to the surface. And he realized for himself, yeah, he's really upset and really heartbroken that she's leaving and knows that she needs to. It's a good thing and all, but he really hadn't confronted it. And this is someone who also shared with me he had high blood pressure and some other like health issues. This was not good for him to be bearing his emotions because it's all connected. So I encouraged him to write a letter to his daughter. And I said, you could give it to her, don't give it to her. It's the action of getting in touch with his emotions and writing those emotions down. Because for him, that was an identity shift. Back to your original question, because he kept saying, I'm still her dad, but I'm not going to be her dad the way I've been her dad. And it was him coming to terms with that for himself, as well as the fact that he was going to miss her. So he did that and it helped. And he shared like a few bits and pieces of it with her, but most of it was for him and just for him to go through that awareness and then catharsis.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's a beautiful example. And I think most parents who go through that shift at some point of time, it could be college now, it could be that kids getting married, and that's a different stage. I think we relate to our kids differently once they're married, and the kind of space we need to suddenly thinks there's somebody equally important. I won't say more important, but equally, or they'll be spending a large amount of time with, and that can be threatening that, oh, am I not important anymore, or I won't get that much time with him or her anymore, and there'll be other. So it is a shift. And I think even with work, I'm going through those shifts, and it takes a while to
Mm-hmm.
process it out. So yeah, that's great advice. Thank you so much. Thank you, Susan, for such a lovely conversation. I walked away understanding more about emotional intelligence and the different. I think it's so layered because we feel that, oh, I understand it, what it is, but there's so much depth to it, and this definitely helped me understand how it plays out in people's life.
Oh,
Yeah,
my
thank you.
pleasure. Thank you.
Thank
Thank you
you
for
for sharing.
having me.
If you found the content valuable, please like, share, and subscribe and spread the word. I feel the best compliment is being referred. That one action of yours can help us reach more people and fulfill the mission of thriving changes. Thank you for considering.